Welcome to another walk in the woods with Brandy and I. So I've been thinking about how fear works on us and the different ways that it affects our motivation, affects our direction and how we do things. One thing that kept on coming back to my mind is popping up in different social media feeds and stuff, so it was making me think about it, was obviously FOMO, fear of missing out, which is a big one for a lot of people these days. And you know, it's really sort of a driving factor behind a lot of bandwagons, you know, whether it's crypto or whatever, you know, AI, anything that you can name, the internet boom, the housing boom. Anytime there's a boom, pretty much, anytime stocks go up like crazy or a new idea comes out, a lot of times it's the fear of missing out that motivates people. And that's also where you get bubbles and where you get just ridiculous, just, what's the word I'm looking for here? I guess really inflation and hyperinflation, things getting way too big and it gets watered down and it's not really as good as it used to be. A lot of times it's that fear of missing out that's behind that. Now for myself, I've noticed that I have the opposite of that. At least as I think of it as the opposite. But it's really not so much the opposite fear, it's really the opposite effect. But the fear is different. So instead of the fear of missing out, I have the fear of wasting time, or the fear of draining actions, FODA, fear of draining actions. And that's you know, been an issue for me where a lot of times, you know, and of course I have a lot going on, so that definitely plays into things. And Brandy and I are doing a lot, trying to run basically 3 or 4 different businesses and get all of them to be profitable and really, you know, taking names, getting out there, making things happen. But but yeah, the fear of draining activities has been, you know, something I haven't really named. Now having a name for is pretty cool because it gives me an idea more so to name the thing that I'm dealing with. When sometimes I get offered something, someone asks me if I want to do something, and, you know, caught between this feeling of, well, this could be a good thing, and the other feeling is, I don't know. I don't know if I want to get into something else like this. And that's the one that personally holds me back sometimes. And I've had to lately deal with it where I just say, you know what? It's worth committing to some things. It's worth stepping in and, you know, taking some risks. Like, that's adventure. That's opening up the door to possibilities. And so it's been an interesting trip for me, but it's also interesting too that what can happen is you get caught between 2 different fears, and then you're kind of in this cognitive dissonance. So on the one hand, like for me, the fear of wasting time or the fear of draining activities, I can get caught between that and the fear of letting people down, fold, fear of letting people down. So I'm a very agreeable person, and I've had to work on that. I'm still working on that to where I can be disagreeable when I have to. I can say no, I can set boundaries. You know, it's been one of the harder things to develop into my adulthood is doing things because it's what's best for me, it's what's best for my wife, it's what's best for other people. It's what I feel God has led me to do with my life. And sometimes that just means saying no to what other people want and expect of you, and refusing to be held accountable based on what they want, based on what they think is the right thing for you. And that's not the easiest thing. That's not been the easiest thing for me. But I'm still kind of walking this line, though, between, on the one hand, the fear of draining activities and the fear of letting people down. And the tension is crazy. The cognitive dissonance is crazy, because you feel that sense of, I want to do what people want me to do here. I want to jump on board. Let's do this thing together, you know, that somebody's trying to sell you on, somebody's trying to get you involved in. And then the opposite direction pressure, the opposite directional pressure is that, but I don't want to get committed to draining activities. I don't want to get committed to something that could be a waste of my time. And you can have those two opposite fears simultaneously putting that pressure on you, and you just kind of are spinning around in a circle in indecision. Instead of just saying no to the thing or just saying yes to the thing, you're caught in this sort of analysis paralysis of going back and forth between those two. And what ends up happening is, even if you make one decision or the other, you still don't feel happy about it. You still don't feel content with it. There's still a lacking peace because the other fear is still present. And so you feel like maybe you're doing something wrong. And then acting out of either fear, even in the absence of the other, it's like fear just doesn't lead you to the best decisions. It doesn't lead you to the most true to your own values, true to your own self, which actually leads me to another fear, because this is kind of a little bit of a concept I've been developing. It's that there's really basically, if you follow sort of the semantics of logic, you know, like contrapositive, converse, inverse, so on and so forth. There's basically 5 directionally. And so it's the fear of missing out. It's the fear of missing yourself. It's the fear of draining actions. It's the fear of letting people down. And then the fear of meaninglessness. So those 5, FOMO, FOMY, F-O-M-Y, FODA, FOLD, and F-O-M-L, FOMO. Anyway, they make a compass, basically, the directional sort of compass of how fear drives us in certain directions and it drives us away from others. So it's interesting because fear is directional. Like, a lot of times we just kind of look at it like it's only one way, and like it just makes people freeze up and not do something. But the reality is, it also makes people do things. You know, it's like a person who's drowning, who's terrified. They're dangerous, even to somebody who's a really good swimmer who could rescue them, because they can, in the panic and in the fear, they can drown their rescuer too, who's trying to help them. So fear doesn't just freeze you up and stop you from acting, it also makes you act in various ways. So understanding these different sort of directions that fear can drive you toward or away from something can make you like a brick house that doesn't want to move, or it can send you forward with like a ridiculous momentum into something that's just going to be the worst possible thing. Like the fear of letting people down and the fear of missing out can both be really driving factors. They can really make a person go forward, overcommit, go into things that they shouldn't. And then the fear of missing yourself can make you doubt your own decisions, can make you second guess what you do choose, and also make you procrastinate, make you take longer. Or for that matter, in a sort of reverse version of it, it can be like, what if I don't do this thing, and then I'll never know who I could have been. I'll never know what I might have done if I had actually done that thing. And, you know, again, these things can sometimes be useful. They can end up working out, even though the reason behind it was fear. But it's better really just to be conscious and aware of why you're doing what you're doing. It's better, in my opinion, to know that what you're doing is for a higher principle, is for a higher reason, for your value system, that it was something that really mattered to you, that it was worth the risk, it was worth the cost, whatever the outcome, whatever happened. That's the right motivational framework, in my opinion, rather than fear. But you really have to understand this 5 directionality of it. Like, now the fear of meaninglessness is a whole different thing. When you're dealing with that, that's when you start moving towards more of like depressive or nihilistic or highly bored kind of thinking. You know, it's like when you hit a point, and I've definitely hit those points in my life. There's definitely jobs that I've worked. There's definitely places where I held positions, where I was at certain institutions, and I just hit a point that it's just like, what's the point of anything I'm doing here? You know, does it really even matter? And the idea of even trying, even putting real effort into it, was just like, what's the point if it's not going to do anything? And I could say the same thing too for like for when I was doing social media, when I was doing stuff earlier in my life, and when it was just experimenting and trying to, you know, become viral or do something huge on social media. I was just trying to chase those results. I was just trying to chase the eyeballs, the attention, the likes, the comments, the subscribers, all the vanity metrics, all the stuff that's like, okay, you're successful because this many people watch your show, or this many people are interacting with you, and therefore what you're doing has value, therefore what you're doing is worthwhile. And when I wasn't getting those results, instead of like just continuing through the way you need to with this kind of thing, or anything really, anything that has a learning curve, anything that requires, you know, real effort, real work to become good at it, to have anything meaningful to offer, instead of committing and sticking to it, I got discouraged. I got unmotivated. I got to feel like, what if I am just doing something and it just doesn't matter? Like, this isn't even what I'm supposed to be doing in the first place. You know, what if this isn't my calling? I'm just wasting my time. It's never going to succeed. It kind of has some crossover with the fear of wasting time or fear of draining activities, but it's a different essential, it's a different existential question, really. It's like, is this, what I'm doing, does it really matter? Could it ever really make a difference? Could it ever really have any kind of impact, ever really accomplish the goals and the aims that I have for it? And that definitely made me freeze up on many projects, honestly, in the past. A lot of projects and things I worked on, I was excited about them at first. I was really motivated. I really wanted to see them take off. I had a high level of confidence that they really meant something, that it was going to go somewhere. And then, and not too much time, as I continued and didn't see results and didn't see the performance I was hoping for, it just kind of petered out, like the motivation left, because in place of that belief that I had something really worthwhile to go after, I had the doubt. I had this lack of confidence, like maybe I was just getting caught up on a bandwagon, or maybe I was just, you know, tricking myself, making myself think, lying to myself, thinking that I could actually do that would actually ever become anything. And, you know, from a purely logical standpoint, it's a worthwhile question. You know, you shouldn't really just assume, of course I can do it if I believe in myself. Of course I can do it if I want to go all in and go after this. There's a certain degree of truth to that, but you do have to actually ask the question, yeah, but is it meaningful? Would it be worth the time? Would it be worth the effort? Out of all the things you could be doing, is that the right thing to be doing? But there's a big difference between asking that question and the fear coming in you, undermining whatever you started with, whatever seed was there of that idea, whatever made you feel like that was a worthwhile thing. So, yeah, I've been navigating that and thinking that through, kind of realizing in my own life how these different stages, like I haven't had a lot, I'm a more cautious person by nature. I've always been more pragmatic, more, I would say, concerned that whatever I do, that I'm as confident as possible that I can really pull it off. I want the odds in my favor. I want to be strategic. I want to really feel like I stand a good chance of winning. I've always felt that way. I've always been that way. And sometimes that's served me well, and other times it feeds into these fears, or the fears feed into it, where I avoid the risk, and I avoid what I feel like is something I can't afford to deal with. I can't afford to make that commitment or continue going that direction. And the second guessing that causes, the cognitive dissonance, the stepping back on your own decisions, it creates instability, and it stops you from committing to any path long enough to see whether or not that really is the right thing for you, to see whether or not it is actually going to become something. I notice, really, looking back at my life, that fear has held me back in many different things. And it's not always the obvious, you know. Sometimes, in some occasions, it has been the fear of missing out for me. Not most of the time, but there have been times that I did jump on something because I felt the scarcity, I felt this is the opportunity right now, and I've got to make this work. And sometimes that's dovetailed with the fear of letting people down, you know, where I've had, say, maybe a job opportunity. I've had an opportunity to work for somebody to be a client, and I feel this drive, I feel this intense like level of focus that's, you know, definitely insane. It's really, really intense focus, but the problem is it's like putting all your eggs in one basket. Like all my expectations, all my hopes, I'm just tensing everything up, trying to land that client, trying to get that job, get that opportunity. And the result is I'm not relaxed. I'm not seeing the big picture. I'm not able to figure out what's really the best possible thing for myself and what I really stand a good chance of accomplishing. And I miss things, you know, like, especially with the fear of letting people down, you miss if you're being manipulated. You miss if they have an ulterior motive, because and fear of missing out does this too. You don't see that, like, it's a bunch of sheep being led off a cliff because you're just one of the sheep and you can't see past everybody else. So it's very interesting because none of these things just necessarily always result in the same, you know, same course of action. The fear of missing out could also drive you, and I think it has for me. It's made me, sometimes it's made me not do something. And I would say it's in the case of, like, where the fear of missing out has definitely gotten in the way for me, where I didn't do something. Well, it's by, you know, asphyxiation, for one thing, death by asphyxiation, because I didn't do something that I really should have done. You know, like I spent my money on a bad investment. I put something in because to me it seemed like, oh, there's no way that it's going to lose. This has got to be the right thing. It's got to be a good thing. And it's like, no, you're being driven by that and you're missing out on what you could be doing instead. That would actually be worthwhile. That would actually be the right move to make, because you can only do so many things. And there's definitely been times too that it's like you can definitely overwhelm yourself, overcommit because of that kind of stuff. And I've done that before. So I've been just kind of thinking these things through. Yeah, the five-fold compass of fears. The fears that can definitely pull us in many different directions. And of course, that's not dealing with like biological fears, like fear if you were faced by a lion suddenly out in the wilderness, or if you knock down a hornet's nest, or, you know, fears related to trauma, fears related to things that you've been through in your life that could, you know, be triggers could cause it. Different triggers could, you know, like gunshots if you were ever in a war zone, lived in a war zone and were traumatized as a child. On the other hand, you know, you've got specific fears, really topic specific fears that are, you know, maybe irrational, like different forms of paranoia, different forms of phobias that, you know, they can be some strange stuff. So I'm not covering any of that, but this compass, and it's more so what I've dealt with in my life, has a lot more to do with meaning and why we do what we do, what we believe about the things that we're doing. And what is the purpose that's behind that? And so these questions of meaning, these questions of semantics, they're really what gets more covered in this compass. But anyway, I actually have a quiz that will be published, and that you can see what result you have if any of those fears are what's primarily stopping you. And if you'd like to think more about this with me, if there's questions that you have about the subject, I definitely appreciate you asking them. Would love to hear in the comments or across all my social medias. DM me, reach out. It's always at Ask John Douglas. And of course, any other questions, anything else that you want to talk about, anything that's of interest to you. So anyway, I think that's it for today. Thanks very much for joining us. Wisdom first always.